É um cão que traz a caça ao dono.
Vai ser um excelente caçador. É pulsante, resistente e nada outro.
The blood flowing through your ear canal. This must be broken.
Hi there.
Hello?
How you doing?
Oh, fine. Just fine, thank you. A little gas after breakfast. How are you?
You ought to be ashamed of yourself, going on about the ocean like that.
Oh, really? And you are, an expert?
Well, at least I've actually been in the water and seen what goes on. And I gotta tell you, the view from down here is a lot more interesting than it is from a chair on the beach.
And a lot more dangerous, my little mermaid.
Oh, come on. This is a coral reef. There's not that much out here that can hurt you.
I'm afraid you've been misinformed. I happen to know that corals themselves are poisonous.
Yeah, but just mildly poisonous. And you know why? Because they're rooted to one spot, which means they can't run away from predators or chase after food, so they survive through chemistry. Each coral has 6 or 8 tentacles with thousands of stinging cells. Little poison-tipped harpoons coiled inside what looks like a baggie. But they fire only when they receive the proper chemical and physical stimulation.
I see. Much like Hollywood during the 80s.
There may be more parallels than you think. Look at these cup corals. During the day, they don't even look alive. But at night, when they're feeding and speeded up, it's party time. What they're doing is, they're firing their poisoned harpoons at plankton. Then they drag the plankton into their mouths and eat them.
I'm always thankful not to be a plankton, but never more than right now.
The main thing to remember is that most corals can't hurt you. Except fire coral, which can give you something like a bad case of poison ivy. And so can this other hydroid that looks like a palm frond.
A hydroid that looks like a palm frond. A survival strategy? Or just plain sneaky? You be the judge. Uh-oh. Little girl, come with me. Hurry, hurry. Catfish attack. Don't bother to thank me. Of all the things that patrol the sea, there's nothing more terrifying than a swarm of poisonous catfish. Like an army of aquatic locusts, they devour everything in their path from microscopic plankton to cocker spaniel. These are young catfish, popularly called kittyfish. Like adolescents everywhere, they hang out in gangs, going wherever they want, breaking the rules. And if something stands in their way, they eat it.
Where on earth did you hear that?
The National Enquirer. Same issue as the story, skydiver devoured by starving birds.
Well, just to set the record straight, catfish eat tiny shrimp and worms, not household pets. And their fin spines can deliver a wasp-like sting, but it's rarely fatal.
And about how big are these particular catfish?
Oh, they're pretty small. About the size of a pocket comb.
Exactly. What does this remind you of?
Right. A lot of little pointy things. And the sea is full of them.
These are urchins, frequently called the porcupines of the sea, for fairly obvious reasons. The little pointy things growing out of every part of their body, need I say it, are poisonous. And it just so happens that urchins like to hang out where we humans like to walk, with our little, naked feet.
You know, I think I figured out why you're afraid of the water. You seem to think everything in the sea is designed to attack you personally, instead of simply helping the animal stay alive. But you're right about one thing. You don't want to step on this particular urchin, because the spines contain a poison that can put you in the hospital.
As one who has never swum, well, as one who's done a bit of wading in the ocean, I'm very interested in those poisonous things that you can step on, particularly the ones you cannot see. That's where these little old boots come in handy.
Those little old boots might come in handy in the South Pacific, where there's a whole family of poisonous fish that use camouflage to survive. Like that fish shaped like a leaf. It carries its venom in those spines along its back. And there's another master of disguise.
Where?
There, under the ledge. You can just make out an eye. Here. When it's not buried, this is what it looks like. It's called a spiny devilfish.
That's a fish. Aren't fish supposed to swim? This one looks like it's dragging itself around on old garden tools.
Those are fin adaptations. And see the spines on its back? There's a venom sac at the base of each one. When it goes into ambush mode, the spines fan shut. This is when they're most dangerous to everyone, except couch potatoes like you.
Must you be so cruel? I wasn't always afraid of the water, you know.
So what happened?
That.
That? A lionfish turned you into a couch potato?
I remember the day clearly. I was at a business meeting when I accidentally dropped a pen into an aquarium.
You poor baby. That explains a lot. I could have warned you that the spines on a lionfish can really be painful. Lionfish are members of the same family as the scorpionfish, but instead of hiding, they swim around looking bigger than they really are, like they're just spoiling for a fight. And they don't get too many takers, at least not in the water. Are you ready to resume our journey? Or have you had enough for one day?
Let's forge bravely ahead.
The animal you don't want to fool with is that one. It's a stonefish.
With a face only a mother stonefish could love. But exactly how does it threaten the human foot?
You see those spines along its back? There are 13 of them, and they contain one of the nastiest venoms in the world. If you happen to step on a stonefish, you'll experience more pain than you've ever felt in your life. The shock alone can kill you. Stonefish like to hunt from an ambush, and they do this by disguising themselves. Once it decides on a spot, the stonefish burrows into the sand or gravel, and then it waits.
And from my extensive reading, I seem to recall that cunning, patience, and blinding speed are the trademarks of the stonefish. Cunning, patience, blinding speed. Any second now. Cunning, patience, blinding speed!
Actually, the stonefish is a very picky eater. So cunning, patience, and blinding speed sometimes give way to apathy. But when it spots a fish it likes, wham!
The thrill of the near miss. I'm surprised the stonefish has survived this long.
Now, my advice to you, if you're going to wade in the ocean, is to make sure you step on something smooth. Like this shell, for example. You'll be pleased to know that I've finally found something in this ocean that I can relate to.
What's that?
It's a kind of a shell, and it's not even empty. Well, it's garlic sauce for you tonight, pal.
It'll be hospital food for you if you don't throw it back right now.
Yeah, why's that?
It's a cone snail, one of the deadliest animals on the reef.
Ah! Great Scott.
Cone snails are a good example of how a very slow animal that likes to eat very fast animals can make it in the ocean.
Which one of those things sticking out of it was just about to shoot me in the nose?
The proboscis with the yellow tooth jutting out is where it keeps its harpoon. The long one's the siphon, which it uses to inhale water. And the two smaller ones on the sides of the proboscis are stalked eyes. When cone snails go hunting, they like to burrow into the sand and wait. When a meal happens by, the cone snail fires its harpoon. A fast-acting poison paralyzes the fish.
And it's chow time. Pretty darn disgusting.
Pretty darn amazing, I'd say.
Well, yes, that too. Amazing in a disgusting kind of way.
And to think that could have happened to me, well, I guess I have learned a lesson. What that lesson is, I have no idea, but I suppose I do know somebody who does. I guess I ought to thank you for saving my life. So, your place or my place? Hello? Oh. Looks like it's her place. That presents a dilemma. Dilemma resolved. The only thing I have to fear is sea urchins, jellyfish, anemones, stinging coral, and stonefish. And a shark or two. Well, all I have to do is be brave.
So far, so good. Water's clear, sand's white. Just a few dark shadows I can't quite make out.
You know, come to think of it, maybe you should change into a wetsuit.
Now you tell me. I hate these mid-water costume changes. But I suppose there's a good reason. Funny about those shadows. It's almost as if there was something moving around underwater.
Just keep walking. You're doing fine.
Big, flat things. I sure wish I had my glasses.
Stop worrying about what's going on underwater and take a look around you.
You know, I never imagined something like this was possible.
Something like what?
Bare, innocent human legs brushing up against something as poisonous as a stingray, and no blood in the water, no screams of pain.
Well, this place is unique because all the stingrays here are used to having people around. But it shows you what can happen when wild sea creatures and humans learn to get along with each other.
Right you are. Nice doggy. Nice doggy.
So, what do you think?
I think I feel the scales falling from my eyes as we speak.
You see, I have learned something during the making of this film. I have learned that the sea is, it is weird. And it is filled with strange but wonderful creatures. I've also learned that they all have a reason for being here, including the strangest creature of them all. You know, the one who walks around on two legs and covers himself with suntan lotion. You know, perhaps the poet E.E. Cummings said it best. Maggie and Millie and Molly and May went down to the beach to play one day.
And Maggie discovered a shell that sang so sweetly she couldn't remember her trouble. And Millie befriended a stranded star whose rays 5 languid fingers were. And Molly was chased by a horrible thing that raced sideways while blowing bubble. And May came home with a smooth, round stone, as small as a world and as large as a loam. For whatever we lose, like a you or a me, it's always ourselves we find and see. Listen, you've been a big help in this water thing. But have I told you about the rainforest?
I'm all ears.
Well, surgery can correct that. But do you have any idea the kinds of things that live in the rainforest? The bats, flesh-eating monkeys, rhinoceri? I'm telling you, it's a jungle out there.
Mais uma vez, boa tarde, às 13 horas. Não perca o desenvolvimento dos temas da atualidade deste sábado, 1 de fevereiro, com Fernanda de Oliveira Rivera no Primeiro Jornal e logo a seguir António Pérez Metel e a atualidade económica em Tostões e Milhões. 2h10, o Humor e o Talento, de Patrícia Rutledge, em Cuidado com as Aparências, e às 2h40, Malhação. 15h45, mais um episódio de Raven e 1 hora depois, cinema aqui na SIC. Star Trek 4, Regresso à Terra, com Leonardo Nimoy e William Shatner em Sessão Aventura, a partir das 16h45. 18h55, Marina Dona Revista, e às 20h, o Jornal da Noite, apresentado por Alberto Marcos Fernandes. Fique bem, tenha um bom fim de semana com a SIC.
Durante 3 semanas, acompanhamos esta equipe de reportagem num safari único. Uma viagem inesquecível pelo coração de África. Atravessamos selvas e florestas e o mais perigoso rio africano. Não perca o último episódio deste fantástico documentário. Amanhã, em BBC Vida Selvagem.
Desde tempos longínquos, que o piscar da luz na Torre do Farol é um sinal de esperança. É verdadeiramente um símbolo. Uma sentinela que nos guia no meio da tempestade. Mas que fazer quando a própria estrutura, concebida para salvar vidas, precisa ela própria de ser salva? Dezenas de faróis americanos enfrentam o mesmo inimigo natural, a erosão. As pessoas de uma pequena comunidade decidiram reagir. Conseguirá uma pequena aldeia de Rhode Island desafiar o poder do tempo e do mar? A mudança do farol. Quando o farol de Block Island foi construído há mais de um século, ficava a 90 metros deste rochedo. Atualmente, escassos 16 metros e meio separam o farol do abismo. O Dr. Jerry Abbott é presidente da Fundação do Farol do Block Island. A sua associação tem um plano arrojado para salvar o farol. Tenciona mudá-lo de sítio.
The expert engineering advice was such that once the erosion got down to 40 feet, that would be the point of no return, that you could no longer be able to rescue it. So we've been literally racing against time.
Um farol pode ser muitas coisas, mas portátil não é de certeza. Ou será?
Looks like they dug a ditch when they first built it.
Estes são os irmãos Matico, Jim, Jerry, Joe e John.
A nice stepped foundation.
Os Maticos fazem mudanças. Mudam casas inteiras. São verdadeiros peritos. A sua empresa chama-se mesmo Peritos em Mudanças de Casas. Já mudaram de tudo, desde celeiros a bombardeiros B-52, mas nunca mudaram um farol. E de certo nunca mudaram um farol com 2 milhões de quilos, 2.000 toneladas de tijolos e granito. É, sem dúvida alguma, o maior desafio da sua carreira.
We've got people betting on us and we got people betting against us. And I promise you, the ones that's betting against us are going to lose. The building's going to be moved.
Well, it's all pretty risky, but the tower separating from the building is what everyone is really concerned with. And we will be too, and we'll stay right on top of it the whole time.
Mas como é que se deslocam 2.000 toneladas de farol conservando-o intacto? Digamos apenas que é preciso ter muito cuidado. São necessários 2 milhões de dólares, algumas dezenas de vigas de aço e 38 macacos hidráulicos. Em primeiro lugar, os Maticos e a sua equipa têm de inserir as vigas de aço através da base da estrutura. Depois de soldadas, as vigas formam uma espécie de armação ou trenó para transportar o farol. A seguir, os operários têm de separar o edifício das suas antigas fundações. Os macacos hidráulicos, por debaixo das vigas de aço, levantarão o edifício apenas 1 milímetro. Só quando a equipa vir uma fenda muito fina a toda a volta das fundações, saberá que o edifício pode ser levantado com segurança.
Right here, we're going to put pressure on it until we pick up a hairline crack here. Then we have to stop right there. You can't keep jacking.
Finalmente, após meses de preparação, a equipa está pronta para acionar os macacos pela primeira vez. É um momento de tensão.
Okay, how much pressure did you want to put on the cross steel?
Between 2 and 2,200.
Okay.
1,200. 15.
Get 2. That doesn't come up any yet.
Pressure on that back one now. Zone 2 now. We'll tighten up a little bit.
All right, let's hold it right there, and we'll pressure up on the mains 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we'll shim the between the mains and the cross steel. Number 1 cross steel, okay?
I think I need a little bit more.
Okay, you want to tighten up? Vincent's got a ½ inch between the mains.
Okay, hold it.
All right, let's stop right there. Let's shim it off, and let's tighten up on the mains. That's it. What happened? Nothing happened. That's the problem.
De súbito, a obra sofre uma paragem brusca e passa-se novamente à mesa de desenho. Por uma razão qualquer, um canto do edifício recusa mexer-se.
What's your ideas with coping with these voids above the beams?
O problema é algo a que chamam vazios, espaços ocos dentro das paredes da estrutura. Essas bolsas de ar dificultam a separação entre o edifício e as suas fundações. Se o levantarem sem preencher previamente os espaços ocos, arriscam-se a um desmoronamento. A equipa enche meticulosamente todos os vazios da estrutura com cimento. É um processo trabalhoso, mas não há alternativa possível.
If the building is damaged beyond repair, it's going to be very bad for the people, local people. It's going to be horrible. And I don't even want to even contemplate it.
It's hard really to put it in words what that light means to us, those of us who have lived here.
And I really feel that it's our turn to do something for the lighthouse that saved so many lives and limbs.
Este revés custou dias muito preciosos à equipa, mas os espaços ocos já foram todos cheios de cimento e os trabalhadores estão prontos para tentar de novo. Todos se interrogam. Irá resultar?
How about it? How about it? There it is. You got it right there. All right, we got a hairline crack. Hold it right there a second. That's it.
And that's it. You got it up. You got the weight on the frame.
Okay, cut and lock it off.
Got it.
Got it. Wasn't a whole lot, was it? But that's it. That's all it takes.
Conseguiram. Agora vão levantar o farol do chão e começar a colocar uma série de carris. O farol será empurrado ao longo desses carris por 4 fortes macacos hidráulicos, cada um deles batizado com o nome de um dos irmãos Matico. Após anos de planeamento e meses de trabalho árduo, chegou o momento. O farol está pronto a ser mudado. Esperamos nós. Para a equipa de mudanças, é a última oportunidade para se preocupar.
You can calculate all you want, but until the time we pull the lever, that's judgment day. Things can happen. This is the type of business, things can happen. On something like this, it's not been done before, this size of building, this size lighthouse, and with all the precautions that we take, something can go wrong. Yeah, it's got to go. It's been here, what, 120-some years? It's time to move on, don't you think?
Okay, hold her up.
E por fim, um edifício concebido acima de tudo para resistir firmemente no seu posto, começa a deslocar-se.
Okay, she's rolling, boys.
Para chegar a este ponto, foram necessários mais de 4 meses. Até agora, o farol deslocou-se apenas 142 centímetros no total, mas daqui em diante o trabalho prosseguirá um pouco mais depressa.
Good.
Centímetro a centímetro, 2.000 quilos quase completaram o seu percurso. Ao longo das 2 últimas semanas, o edifício deslocou-se em média 7,5 metros por dia. Agora está quase a chegar ao destino. Finalmente, o farol de Block Island tem um novo poiso, a 96 metros da falésia em erosão. Para a equipa de mudanças, é uma doce vitória.
Granddaddy came to this country farming. My father started a business. The 4 of us been in it all of our lives. And if Daddy could see us now, that'd be all right. Well, boys, we're done it. You ready for another
As palavras do poeta são verdadeiras. Nada desperta tanto a imaginação como um farol. A população de Block Island e a equipa de mudanças aprenderam algo diferente este verão. Descobriram, por seu lado, que não há nada que faça mover um farol como a imaginação.
a seguir, não percam um primeiro olhar pela atualidade deste sábado com Fernanda de Oliveira Ribeiro no Primeiro Jornal. Tenham um bom dia e um bom fim de semana com a SIC.
Só há duas maneiras de comprar casa. A difícil e a do crédito. Crédito Predial Português. Quem quer casa, vai ao crédito.
No Feijó terminaram as manobras perigosas e alta velocidade durante as madrugadas de fim de semana. Praxes violentas feitas aos escrutas dos Marines chocam os Estados Unidos. Foi divulgado um vídeo assustador. António Fagundes fala à SIC sobre os 30 anos de carreira que o levaram à posição de rei dos atores brasileiros. Boa tarde. A velocidade na via rápida do Feijó não ultrapassou esta madrugada os 50 km/h. O Corpo de Intervenção da PSP esteve no local para evitar que os adeptos da velocidade repetissem as manobras perigosas que se verificam invariavelmente aos fins de semana naquela zona.
No Elefante Azul só entrou quem tinha o carro sujo. De resto, a ordem era de marcha, lenta de preferência. A PSP veio em peso para evitar as manobras do costume. Na via rápida do Feijó, nas noites de sexta e sábado, a regra era só uma: acelerar até amanhecer. A SIC deu a notícia no fim de semana passado, o governador civil do distrito viu e não gostou. Ontem, até os comandantes fizeram serão. De 20 em 20 metros, lá estavam os radares e até apareceu o corpo de intervenção da PSP. Os adeptos da velocidade tiveram de abrandar e o ruído que fizeram foi outro.
Sem surpresa, o Porto venceu ontem à noite o Setúbal por 3-1 e continua a sua caminhada invicta para o título nacional. O brasileiro Jardel voltou a marcar e reforçou o comando da lista dos melhores marcadores.
Na primeira volta do campeonato, o Setúbal empatou